Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Let Us Head Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Unlocks Ultimate Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. All men are not created equal. This was the truth about society that I was forced to learn at the young age of 4. In today's world, nearly everyone was born with some kind of power, named as a quirk. 80% of the world's population was blessed with such quirks. The appearance of these quirks made the profession that everyone had ever dreamed of to become true, being a hero. But the other 20% of the population, what are you doing, Kaken? Can't you see that he's crying? If you don't stop now, I'll never forgive you, yelled a kid with curly green hair while trembling. Izuku Midoriya, at the age of 4, was standing between a kid who was crying and his childhood friend or bully as of now, Katsuki Bakugo. Deku, even though you're quirkless, you still want to play the hero, Bakugo said while hitting his palm with a fist, which set off an explosion on his palm. Izuku grew more terrified as Bakugo and his 2 lackeys leapt at him to put him in his place as they mentioned beforehand. As Bakugo's fist neared Izuku's face, only one thought was circling in his head: stop, please, stop. Suddenly the surroundings grew so hot that Bakugo and his lackeys stopped midway to hit Izuku. What they saw in front of them scared them to a great extent. Izuku had red flames swirling around him, which didn't seem to harm the boy behind him. His hair, while still green, now had streaks of red forming on it. The most terrifying thing was the glare set on Izuku's face, where his eyes, both of which had been green, were now mismatched in color. One eye was the original emerald green, but the other eye had changed to a vibrant ruby red. The flames dancing around Izuku seemed to be affected by the emotional state of the boy before them as his glare intensified to a point that his flames threatened to wash over Bakugo and his lackeys. How is this possible? Deku was supposed to be quirkless, a pebble on my path that I could kick around whenever I wanted, Bakugo thought while taking a few steps back. Leave the boy alone, Bakugo, and I don't want to see your face ever again. While the hostility in his voice surprised even himself, Izuku refused to back down now. He had to stand up to Bakugo. At that point, he decided that no longer would he be the shy and afraid Deku. It was time to grow up. I'll remember this, Deku. Next time we'll show you your place, Bakugo screamed while turning and running away, with his 2 lackeys scrambling after him. Seeing that Bakugo and his lackeys were no longer around, Izuku took a deep breath while his flames subsided and the temperature around them dropped to normal. The boy behind him was looking at him with a sense of awe. Thank you for saving me from them, he said while bowing to show his gratitude. Hey now, it wasn't that big a deal, Izuku said while scratching the back of his head and grinning. He waved to the boy as he exited the park, all the while thinking about his power and how he was able to stand up to Bakugo. This power is amazing. I have to find out what else I can do, he thought to himself while looking down at his hands. For the next few years, Izuku devoted his time to train himself both physically and mentally so as to control his powers properly. He found out that his quirk was a higher degree of flame manipulation. He can not only manipulate any flames around him, but also produce flames himself, breath fire from his mouth and eat any flames around to restore his energy. He also realized that his senses have been heightened to a great degree, so much that he had to wear noise-canceling headphones all the time to not get overwhelmed by the sounds around him. The flames can also be used to further augment his physical strength to make his blows more powerful and can also be used to increase his speed. When he came home that day and told his mother about what happened in the park, while showing her his powers, she broke down in tears as she was so overwhelmed with joy for her kid. When the doctor had deemed Izuku as quirkless, and Midoriya had blamed herself because her son could no longer be able to achieve his dream. Seeing him now made her proud that Izuku had decided to change himself and keep working towards his dream. And Midoriya now believed that her boy would be the best hero the world has ever seen. Back in his room, Izuku looked towards a poster of All Might, the world's greatest hero and his role model. He lighted his fist on fire while pointing it towards the poster to show his determination of achieving his dream. A boy with green hair having red stakes and wearing a headphone rushed past people who were going to their respective workplaces. His hair came down to cover one eye while the other eye, a vibrant emerald green, shone brightly in the morning sunlight. A grin blossomed on his face when he saw a villain attack happening a distance ahead as he rushed to join the mass of people that was present to see which hero would come. His freckles were dabbed by a reddish hue as his joy bubbled forth in a laugh while he took out his notebook for another day of quirk documentation. Izuku Midoriya was a fanboy with a big dream, which he might just achieve with his powers. But that's a story for another day. Izuku pushed past the people gathered to get to the front of the crowd. Who's fighting? He asked as he reached the front and was standing next to an old man. A man who seemed to be made completely of wood jumped into action to fight the villain. The young and talented rising star, Kamui Woods. Izuku gushed while the old man looked at him in amusement. You were the one asking, but you just have a hell of a commentary yourself, kid. I take it that you're a fanboy, aren't you? The old man said, to which Izuku ducked his head in embarrassment. Usage of power during rush hour and severe property damage. You're the incarnation of evil, Kamui said while branches started growing along his arm. Here it comes, Izuku thought excitedly. Preemptive binding. Lacquered chain prison, Kamui shouted as the branches shot towards the villain. Cannon. Before the branches could reach the villain, he was kicked by a giant lady wearing a skin-tight bodysuit. Today is the day of my debut. My name is Mount Lady. Pleasured to make your acquaintance, she said with a wink. Male photographers gathered to take her pictures while Izuku just deadpan. As Mount Lady was basking in the praises from the crowd, Kamui was sulking in the background. Izuku was busy taking notes on Mount Lady's quirk, which didn't escape the attention of the old man. You're even taking notes. You want to be a hero, don't you? He said, to which Izuku just responded with a big grin. Seeing that he was going to be late to school, he closed his notebook and sprinted in the direction of his school, all the while thinking about the battle that happened. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he didn't see what was in front of him and crashed into someone. Ouch, he muttered while holding his head and looking to the person with whom he just crashed. It was a girl with a spiked ponytail. She seemed to be around his age and was wearing casual clothes while her books were strewn around her, probably from the collision with him. He quickly got back to his feet and started apologizing to her. I'm so sorry. I was absorbed in my thoughts and didn't see where I was going, and now you're hurt and your books are now everywhere. I'll help you gather them up. He got all that out in one breath while the girl just giggled at his frantic attempts to apologize. It's okay. I didn't see you coming as well, seeing that I was absorbed in one of my books, she said with a radiant smile on her face, to which Izuku just blushed. He extended a hand to help her up, which she gladly accepted. Your hand is warmer than usual. Are you all right? She asked him after letting go of his hand as he started gathering her books. Oh yeah, I'm all right. It's just a side effect of my quirk. My body temperature is higher than normal, Izuku said while handing her books back to her. Thank you so much. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. It is nice to meet you, she said while smiling at him. I'm still sorry about crashing into you like that. That aside, the name's Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said while scratching the back of his head and blushing a bit. Momo was a really cute girl, and her clothes looked so good on her that Izuku couldn't help but be flustered in her presence, to which she only giggled when she noticed his flustered state. Well then, Izuku, I guess I'll be seeing you around sometimes, she asked hopefully as she too found Izuku cute and wanted to meet him again. Maybe, Izuku said while putting his hands in his pockets and smiling at her. Then he remembered that he was going to be late to school, and his smile disappeared. Shit, I'm gonna be late to school. I have to hurry. I guess I'll see you around sometimes, Momo, he said while starting to run towards his school and waving at her. She waved back at him and shouted, see you around, Izuku, all the while smiling brightly. When her gaze fell to the books that she was holding, she furrowed her eyebrows on finding an unfamiliar notebook among them. She took it out and read the title, Hero Analysis for Future Number 13. She looked at the bottom of the cover to find Izuku's name scrawled there, which told her that he had left it among her books by mistake. She looked towards where Izuku had run off to see that the boy had already disappeared. Well, I'll give it back when we meet again, I guess. She smiled at the thought of meeting the cute boy with the headphones again. He was really cute. I can't wait to meet him again. With that thought, she turned and started walking in the other direction. He had reached his school on time and was now idly sitting in class while the teacher droned about them being third years and how they had to decide a career for themselves. But he then said that they all wanted to join the hero course, to which everyone in class started cheering. Izuku only sighed at the noise they were making. That was sure to have hurt his ears if he wasn't wearing the headphones. Don't lump me with these extras, teach. I'm not gonna be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these rejects, came the scathing voice of one Katsuki Bakugo, to which Izuku only facepalmed. As the class broke down in disagreement, the teacher said, oh yeah, Bakugo, you want to go to UA High, right? UA High, that national school. I heard that their acceptance rate is really low. I came second in the mock tests. I'll be the only one from this school to be accepted to UA, and I'll surpass All Might to be the world's greatest hero, Katsuki declared while his hands released sparks. Izuku was still sitting and looking at Katsuki with the most bored look that he could muster. Oh yeah, Midoriya wanted to go to UA High as well, the teacher said as the whole class's attention shifted to the green-haired boy sitting at the back with a bored look on his face. That statement was enough to bring Katsuki out of his excitement and glare in the direction of the headphones-wearing boy. Deku, what is the meaning of this? He seethed as his hand grew red. As he was going to bring that hand down on Izuku's desk, it was caught by Izuku, who still had the most bored look upon his face. Second place in the mock test, and you're already jumping to conclusions, Bakugo. You should know who aced those tests, me, he drawled while a lazy grin grew on his face. Surpass All Might. Don't make me laugh. With your attitude, it's doubtful whether you'll even become a hero or not. Izuku said while Katsuki's glare just intensified. The class around them grew silent to watch the exchange going on between the two strongest boys in their class. While Izuku never showed off his powers, no one has been able to beat him in a fight, not even Katsuki. Izuku kept to himself, without making any friends or talking to anyone. But everyone knew that he was not someone to be messed with. Everyone except Katsuki. After Izuku manifested his quirk and scared Katsuki away during their childhood, their friendship started to strain. Not that there was anything proper to begin with. Katsuki hated how Izuku had showed him up in the park, all the while planning to get back at the green-haired boy. He was constantly trying to show Izuku up whenever he got the chance, but failed all the time. Either Izuku ignored his taunts, or his explosions had no effect on Izuku due to the nature of his quirk. Instead, Izuku chose to eat the flames generated from Katsuki's explosions and smirk in Katsuki's direction before walking away from him. All these encounters made Katsuki hate Izuku more and more, while Izuku stopped considering him as a friend after seeing his true nature. Which brings us to the current time. Katsuki was gritting his teeth while staring at the grinning boy before him. Even though he knew that Izuku was better than him, his pride wouldn't let him admit that. The ringing of the school bell snapped his attention away from the green-haired boy. Izuku just got up from his seat, took his bag and moved towards the door with one hand waving back at Katsuki. "See ya, Bakugo," was the only thing that was heard before he exited the classroom. Katsuki glared at his friends when they tried to snap him out of his stupor before releasing a frustrated huff and going out the door. His friends just looked at each other and shrugged before following him. Meanwhile, in another part of the town, a creature who seemed to be made of slime was running away after snatching a woman's purse. While the people were commenting about the purse snatcher, a tall, skinny man exited a convenience store. When he heard the people and looked towards the purse snatcher, he transformed into a muscular form. "Everything is going to be okay now." "Why?" "Because I am here," he said while smiling brightly. The purse snatcher looked back where the voice came from and became afraid, choosing to enter the sewers quickly. The man followed him without a second thought. Izuku was walking home leisurely while humming to himself, all the while thinking about his encounter with Momo in the morning. When he entered the underside of a bridge, he didn't notice the slime moving towards him. By the time he noticed that something was wrong, the slime had jumped upon him. "No need to worry, kid. This'll only hurt for a little bit," the villain hissed while trying to suffocate Izuku. When he realized that the slime intended to take over his body, a glare etched upon his face. "Not today." Izuku screamed inside his head and lighted his whole body on fire. As soon as he saw parts of his body solidifying and falling off, the villain quickly removed himself from the boy. Izuku's hair was flying up as flames danced around his body, which made his mismatched eyes visible to the villain. He took some time to study the burning boy before him, who didn't look happy. Ruby red and emerald green eyes glared back at the villain. Before any one of them could make a move, the cover of the sewer behind the villain shot up and a buff man came out of it. "There you are. Have you decided to stop running now?" the man said, all the while having a bright smile upon his face. The villain started trembling on seeing the man. When Izuku saw who the man was, he was so surprised that his flames went out. Seeing a chance, the villain jumped upon him, trying to take over his body again. "That's enough. Texas smash," the man shouted while punching in the villain's direction. The punch released a stream of compressed air which blew away the villain and freed Izuku from his hold. "All might," Izuku said while recovering from his disoriented state. As he came back to his senses, he saw All Might looking at him questionably. "Are you all right, young man?" he asked, to which Izuku nodded while getting up. "Don't worry, I took care of the villain," he proudly stated while showing him a bottle filled with the slime and two disoriented eyes floating in it. Izuku could only sweat drop on seeing the villain that was trying to take over his body forced into a plastic bottle. "Well, seeing as my job here is done, I'll be on my way," All Might said while turning around and preparing to jump. Izuku, seeing that his role model was about to take off when he had so many questions to ask him, decided upon the only crazy idea that popped up in his head. As soon as All Might jumped, he felt something weird on his thighs. Looking back, he saw that the kid from before was clinging to his legs for dear life while they were in midair. Hey, I understand that you're a fan, but this is taking fanaticism to a whole new level," All Might said while trying to pry Izuku off his legs. "If I let go now, I'll die," Izuku screamed while tightening his holds on the legs. All Might nodded to himself and looked around before landing on a roof. "That was dangerous, kid. You almost got yourself killed. I'm sure if you ask the people in the building, they'll let you down. Now it's time to take my leave," All Might said while turning around to jump away again. "Wait, please. I have so many things that I want to ask you," Izuku pleaded. "Young man, I'm a busy person," All Might tried to reason with him. "Can I become a hero as great as you someday?" Izuku asked while turning hopeful eyes upon said hero. All Might was thinking of what answer he wanted to give to the kid when he felt a sharp pain in his chest. "Crap, my time is running out," was the only thought on his mind when a cloud of smoke covered him. When the smoke subsided, a tall, skinny man was standing in All Might's place. What? Who are you? Where did All Might go? Izuku asked while frantically looking around. I am All Might. The man managed to get out before he threw up blood, which didn't help Izuku's confusion. You're kidding. Izuku tried to deny whatever the man was saying. All Might is a hero who saves everyone with a fearless smile. All Might heaved a sigh before he leaned back and sat down against the wall. Believe me, young man, there's plenty of fear behind that smile, All Might said while lifting his t-shirt. Izuku gasped on seeing a large scar on the side of his stomach which seemed to expand up to his chest. 5 years ago I received this injury while fighting a villain. I lost my whole stomach while my respiratory organs were badly damaged. I became emaciated from repeated surgeries and now can only hold my hero form for few hours a day, All Might said while looking at Izuku seriously. 5 years ago. Then it was he fight with Toxic Chainsaw, Izuku pointed out. You've got your facts right, young man, but no, that fight was never made known to the public, All Might said while getting up. A distant explosion snapped their attention in that direction as they both quickly went down the building to get where the explosion came from. When they reached the part of the city where the explosion occurred, they saw the slime villain from before who now seemed to have someone captive. Katsuki was going home with his friends when he came across a bottle. He gave it a good kick to release some of his frustrations. The kick resulted in opening the bottle while waking up the villain inside it, who towered over Katsuki. You seem to have a powerful quirk, kid. With your power, I'll be able to beat All Might, the villain said while jumping upon him. His friends just screamed and ran in the other direction. Which brings us to the current situation. Katsuki tried blowing up the slime covering him, but it was all in vain. The villain just looked on in glee as he would soon have a powerful quirk at his disposal. The heroes around weren't able to get close due to the continuous explosions which were causing fires around the villain. Kid, you need to calm down, Kamui shouted while trying to get close and failing. When Izuku reached there, he was shocked on seeing the villain from before again. How? All Might caught him. Wait, the bottle must have fallen out when I grabbed onto All Might's legs. It's my fault, Izuku thought while analyzing the situation around. When he realized that the boy inside the villain was Katsuki, he just ran forward without thinking. Hey kid, stop. Kamui tried to stop him but he was too fast. While running, he sucked in all the flames that were around the villain, causing the people and heroes present to look at him in astonishment. Izuku brought his hand up and threw a fireball at the villain's face, which made him scream and loosen his hold on Katsuki. Izuku came up and grabbed Katsuki's hand while trying to pull him out of the slime. Deku, what are you doing here? Katsuki questioned angrily. Shut up. My legs moved on their own. Nonetheless, it looked like you were begging for help, Izuku said with a smirk while pulling with more force. All Might was among the crowd looking at what was happening. The kid is trying so hard and yet me, who's a hero, is forced to stand in the crowd and watch. Pathetic, he thought while forcing himself to transform. Izuku put more force and finally managed to pull Katsuki away from the slime. Both of them were thrown back by the force and Katsuki passed out after hitting his head on a wall. The villain was now furious and tried to jump on Izuku to finish him. That is enough for you. You should never have appeared here. Detroit Smash, All Might shouted while delivering an uppercut which scattered the slime villain, and the air pressure change from the punch caused clouds to form. While All Might was being interviewed by reporters, the heroes were praising Izuku. Even if it was completely reckless, you were great out there. That is a great quirk, Kamui said while patting Izuku's back. Well, jumping in to save Katsuki made it worth the kiss Mount Lady placed on his cheek for his bravery. Katsuki was being looked over by paramedics who have arrived on the scene. Izuku looked towards All Might and smiled before turning to walk home. On his way home, Izuku was surprised once again when All Might appeared before him. I am here, was all he was able to get out before coughing blood and transforming back to his skinny form. All Might, why are you here? Weren't you surrounded by reporters just now? Izuku questioned. It was easy to get away from them, All Might said while wiping the blood from his mouth. I'm sorry, All Might. Because of me the villain escaped and you had to transform out of your time to save me, Izuku said while looking down. That isn't what I'm here for, young man, All Might said. Every hero has something common happen to them when they first started. Their legs moved before they could think. That's what happened to you, right, young man? Izuku could only nod his head in confusion of where All Might was getting with this. Your bravery was something that caught my attention. Even when no one was willing to jump in, you were the one to go into fight, without knowing your own chances of winning, All Might said while grinning proudly. Young man, you are fit to be the inheritor of my power. So, are you willing to be my successor and become the next symbol of peace? Izuku was staring at All Might in shock, not believing the words that his role model just said. He was so out of it that All Might had to shake him to bring him back to his senses. Inheriting your power, how is that even possible? Izuku asked incredulously after getting back to his senses. The tabloids do speak about my quirk to be something along the lines of superhuman strength or a boost. But let me tell you the truth, young man. This quirk was passed on to me like a sacred torch, All Might said seriously. It was passed on to you. Izuku was growing even more confused now. Yes, young man, the power to transfer power. That is the quirk I inherited. I was crowned with one for all. All Might said while extending his hand forward. One person cultivates the power and passes it on to another, who further cultivates it and passes it on. It is the crystallization of power that spins together the voices of those who need help. Izuku was slowly grasping the idea. But there was one question on his mind. Why do you want to give such an amazing power to me? All Might just sighed before he said, like I said before, young man, I've been looking for a successor. Back then, you were braver than anyone else present and that spirit caught my attention. Regardless, it all comes down to your choice whether you want to accept it or not. But I already have a quirk. Won't that be a problem? Izuku decided to clear his final query. As far as I know, young man, that won't be a problem. My role model is placing so much trust in me. I can't let him down. Yes, let's do this, Izuku thought while clenching his fist in determination. I'm ready to be your successor. All Might, he said with a determined look on his face. All Might just grinned after seeing the look on Izuku's face and said, a direct answer. That's what I like to hear, young man. Meet me at the seaside park 2 days from now. When Izuku returned home, he was met with a worried mother who was drowning herself in tears after hearing the news about the villain attack and seeing Izuku caught up in it. After assuring her that he was all right and didn't sustain any injuries, his mother seemed to calm down. He excused himself to go up to his room and write about all the quirks he witnessed today in his notebook. After washing himself and getting a change of clothes, he picked up his bag to take out his notebook. When he couldn't find it in his bag, he grew confused. Did I drop it somewhere? But where could I have dropped it then? He got up and moved to his computer before the instance from this morning struck him. That's it. I probably put it with the books by mistake and gave it to Momo. He could only heave a sigh at his absent-mindedness now. Well, if she has it, then it gives me an excuse to talk to her. If I meet her again, that is. Realizing his train of thoughts, he blushed slightly. His mother calling him down for dinner broke him out of his thoughts and he went down to have dinner. In another part of the city, Momo was in her room, going through Izuku's notebook. The detailed descriptions of many different quirks along with their strengths and weaknesses surprised her. So, not only is he cute, but he's also got an exceptional eye for detail. Realizing her thoughts, she blushed deeply and covered her face in embarrassment. I can't believe I'm thinking of him like this after meeting him just today. Though I hope that we meet again and his notebook does give me a chance to speak to him some more. She smiled slightly before her eyelids grew heavy as she fell asleep. Izuku didn't have school the next day, so he decided to roam around the city after breakfast, walking at a steady pace with hands in his pocket and his signature headphones on. He smiled at the people around him, who were busy with their own stuff. His visible eye crinkled in happiness while his hair seemed to bounce with every step he took, reaching the location where he bumped into Momo the previous day. He decided to wait and see if she came around today as well. He leaned against a nearby tree while going through his mobile for anything interesting news. Meanwhile, Momo was walking in the direction of the location where she bumped into Izuku the day before. She was holding Izuku's notebook while going through what to say if she met him. She felt like some giddy schoolgirl with a crush, which turned her face red with embarrassment. I don't have a crush on him after meeting him just one time only, do I? She shook her head to clear the thought, but it didn't go away. Damn him and his cuteness, she muttered with a huff. When she reached the location from yesterday, she looked around to see if Izuku would be there, else she was prepared to wait and see if he went through here today as well. When Momo's eyes landed on a familiar boy with headphones and one eye visible, who was leaning on a tree while going through his mobile, a smile blossomed on her face. She turned towards a shop window next to her to see whether she appeared presentable and patted down her dress before starting to walk towards him. When Izuku noticed the presence of someone before him, he looked up to find obsidian eyes staring back at him. A smile broke out on his face when he realized that it was Momo. When his gaze shifted to her attire, he couldn't help the small blush that grew on his face. She looked really good in a sundress. At the same time, Momo found herself blushing as well, seeing how good Izuku looked in casual clothes. Clearing his throat, Izuku decided to be the first one to speak. Hey Momo, it's good to see you again. Likewise Izuku, were you waiting for me here? She couldn't help but ask. Would that be weird? He asked, hoping that didn't creep her out. Momo was elated to know that he was waiting for her. Oh right, you left your notebook among my books yesterday, she said, remembering part of the reason she wanted to meet him today. Aw thanks, I realized that I left it with you after I reached home. Izuku took the notebook while scratching his head sheepishly, not knowing about what else to talk about but not wanting to separate so quickly either. Both were at a loss for words. Gathering his courage, Izuku decided to ask, Momo, are you free right now? While surprised by his sudden question, she managed to give a meek yeah while blushing at the idea of where this was going. Then, you don't mind some coffee, do you? Izuku asked while trying not to blush. Hearing his question made Momo blush more, but she answered with a bright smile, coffee sounds great. Seeing her agree to his proposition made Izuku smile brightly as well. There's a nice cafe nearby. Shall we go there? Izuku asked, getting a nod from Momo. On reaching the cafe and getting a table, they gave their orders to the waitress who had come to their table. While waiting for their orders, they decided to make small talk about their likes, dislikes, and hobbies. Momo was surprised and elated to know that Izuku wanted to go to UA High as well. I went through your notebook yesterday, out of curiosity of course. I hope you don't mind, Momo said before taking a sip of her coffee. Nah, it's okay. There isn't anything personal written in there, Izuku said while stirring his coffee to cool it down a bit. The quirk descriptions you have in there are exceptionally detailed. I haven't seen anyone ever analyze quirks the way you do, Momo said in an impressed tone. Izuku just grinned bashfully and said, yeah, quirk analysis has been a hobby of mine since childhood. I've always wanted to become a hero, so I decided to study other heroes and their quirks to get some pointers. After finishing their coffees, Izuku and Momo had a small argument as to who was going to pay. Momo insisted that she'd pay for hers, but Izuku wanted to pay for both of their coffees. In the end, Izuku won and paid for both their coffees before going out of the cafe with Momo. Izuku offered to walk Momo to the train station, to which she happily agreed. Occasionally their hands would brush while walking and they'd both blush, but didn't make any effort to move apart. On reaching the train station, Momo felt a little sad that she had to part ways with Izuku now, but still turned to him with a cheery smile. I had fun today, Izuku. It was really nice to meet you. I hope we can be friends now, she said while extending a hand towards him. Izuku shook her hand and said, yeah, Momo, I had fun as well, and I would be glad to be your friend. They wished each other good luck for the UA entrance exam and promised to meet in UA. After seeing Momo disappear among the crowd at the station, Izuku smiled while a gust of wind blew through his hair. I guess I do have a crush on her, he thought while turning to walk home. Meanwhile, Momo was thinking along the same lines. He has such a great personality, and with his cuteness it's hard not to have a crush on him. I guess I do have a crush on him. She smiled while looking out of the glass window behind her. So, why did you call me here? Izuku asked while looking around at the mountains of trash littering the shoreline. We need to train your body to make it ready to receive one for all. An improper vessel would not be able to handle the power of one for all, young man. Speaking of which, I never caught your name. All Might, who was in his normal form, said while turning to look at Izuku. All right, it's Izuku Midoriya, Izuku said, scratching the back of his head for forgetting about that. Young Midoriya then. I also don't know much about your quirk, except that you can eat flames and throw fireballs. I would like to know more about it and make necessary changes to your training depending upon that. Sounds reasonable. Well, my quirk is a higher degree of flame manipulation, kinda like Endeavor's quirk but quite different at the same time. I can manipulate flames around me as well as create flames of my own and breathe fire too. And as you already saw that day, I can eat any flames around to replenish my reserves. Also, using these flames while fighting augments my strength and speed to about 5 times my normal body strength and speed. My senses are heightened to about 5 times that of a normal human as well. That's why I wear these headphones all the time so the noises around don't overwhelm me. I can also decide what my flames would and wouldn't burn, although that requires a lot of focus. So, I've been training both physically and mentally since my quirk first manifested, to get a better control over it, Izuku described while creating a small dragon with his flames and making it dance around his hands. All Might just looked on in fascination at the level of control the boy had over his flames. He then smiled and said, "That's quite a quirk you have, young Midoriya. What do you call it though?" The dragon disappeared when Izuku began talking. Since my quirk is different from Endeavor's Hell Flames but does the same job, I decided to name it Dragon Flames after a year of having it. Nice name for a powerful quirk, kid. Now, since you've been training your body since childhood, it might not take us that long to prepare your body for receiving one for all. We'll clean all this trash from this shoreline to further train your body. I have some diet plans made for you, so do take care of your diet as well, All Might said while handing Izuku the plans. Izuku looked over them before saying, "So, I'll have to drag trash around to train my body." All Might shifted to his buff form before starting to crush the fridge next to him while saying, "Heroes today are all about the showy stuff. Originally, being a hero meant doing volunteer service. Even if people call those boring now, you can't waver from these roots." Izuku just looked on in awe at All Might's strength. After crushing the fridge completely, he stood up and said, "You'll clear the horizon for this complete section. That is your first step towards becoming a hero." "My first step is to clean all of this?" Izuku asked while looking around. "I did some research on the internet. Apparently this part of the shore has been like this for many years. Yeah, for some reason, the currents bring in waste to the shore and people use that to hide their illegal dumping. Young Midoriya, you want to go to UA High, right? That is the hardest hero course in this country. Getting in won't be that easy. We have only 10 months till the UA entrance exams. That's why we're going to train for the entrance exams, to prepare your body and make you ready for the UA Hero course, All Might said, raising a fist towards Izuku. Izuku stared at it for a moment before bumping his fist with All Might's and saying, "Yeah." All Might was surprised at the strength the boy had due to his previous training. He was expecting the boy to struggle with moving the biggest items among the trash, but Izuku struggled for a few days before he was able to move those easily too. All Might knew that the beach would be clean before the 10 months were over, but he certainly wasn't expecting this. When he arrived at the park that morning, he was shocked to see it completely clean. Izuku was sitting on top of the trash pile at the side and meditating. Hey, I expected him to complete this in less than 10 months, but this is unexpected. He even cleaned outside of where I told him to. He finished what was told of him before the assigned time. More than perfectly, All Might thought as he watched the sun rise unobstructed by piles of trash. Seeing that Izuku was now up and coming down from the pile, he shifted to his buff form to congratulate the boy. You did what was told and completed it before time. More than perfectly. I'm proud of you, kid. I see that I've made a proper choice for my successor, All Might said while tearing a strand of his hair. Thank you, All Might. Though I couldn't have done it without you, Izuku said, taking off his jacket and tying it around his waist. This was something I was once told. Something that you receive because you're lucky and something that you receive because you're recognized are different in essence. Don't sell yourself short, young Midoriya. You've earned this due to your own efforts, All Might said, presenting the hair to Izuku. Now eat this. Izuku had a blank look on his face after hearing the last part. It doesn't matter as long as you take in my DNA. Now come on, eat it, All Might said while encouraging the poor boy to swallow the hair. I never imagined that it would be like this, Izuku thought while having a disgusted look upon his face after swallowing the hair. It'll take some time for you to get the quirk. We'll start training with it tomorrow. Meet me at the UA High gates in the morning. UA High? What are we going there for? Will they even allow someone to enter who isn't a student? Izuku asked confusedly. Worry not, young Midoriya. I've got it covered. Now go home and get some rest. You deserve it, All Might said while pushing Izuku towards the direction of his home. While laying down to sleep that night, Izuku's thought drifted towards Momo again. They did promise to meet in UA, but not seeing each other for 10 months felt a bit too much for Izuku. He knew that Momo had to prepare for the exams as well, so he didn't blame her. But he cursed himself every day for forgetting to get her number. With a sigh, he drifted off to sleep. Izuku was staring in amazement at the gates of UA High. All Might just smiled after looking at him. Welcome to UA, my boy. Let's go in. There are some people who want to meet you. Izuku followed All Might, who led him towards a building at the back of the school. On entering the building, he could see 3 people standing there. There was an old lady, a man who seemed like he hasn't had a proper sleep in years, and a mouse, dog, or bear standing beside her. Izuku recognized the creature to be the principal of UA High, Nezu. Tashinori, this is your successor, Principal Nezu asked, smiling at the lanky blonde man. Yes, sir. This is Izuku Midoriya, the next inheritor of One for All Might said while shoving Izuku forward. Izuku bowed deeply and said, It's an honor to meet you in person, Principal Nezu. Nezu took some time to look Izuku over and smiled on seeing the fire in his eyes. I can see why you chose him, Tashinori. He'll be a great successor, he thought while moving back to stand beside the old lady. Now then, Midoriya-kun, this is the training room of UA High. Seeing as Uria's special case, I've allowed permission for you to train here to develop your quirk. I've been told that you already have a quirk and have excellent control over it. Do you mind giving us a demonstration? I don't mind, sir. I'll be more than happy to show you, Izuku said with a grin. The rest of the people moved back as Izuku stood before a training dummy. He sucked in a deep breath before releasing a large stream of flames towards the dummy. Even All Might and the others standing a good distance away felt the heat from the flames. When the flames subsided, all that remained was a pile of ash where the dummy was standing. That was impressive, Midoriya-kun. I can't wait to see you in UA High. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have lots of work to do. Good luck with your training, Midoriya-kun. Aizawa-sensei and Recovery Girl are here with All Might to monitor your training and seeing that you don't injure yourself too badly, Principal Nezu said before turning to walk away. Let's start your training with One for All, young Midoriya. To use One for All, just squeeze your buttocks and yell this within your heart, smash, All Might said while punching the air. Izuku just deadpanned towards his mentor after hearing the instruction. You've never taught anyone before, have you? All Might's sweat dropped while Recovery Girl giggled and even Aizawa had to smile at that. Anyway, let's do this, Izuku said turning towards another training dummy. He drew back his fist, letting the power of One for All flow through it, before punching the dummy hard. The dummy was blown away from the force and the high-pressure winds generated due to that punch. When the wind subsided, the training dummy was completely obliterated. Izuku tried raising his arm to cheer but felt a sharp pain in it. which made him drop to his knees and scream out. The adults rushed to him to assess his injuries. His whole arm was red and seemed to be broken in several places. Recovery girl placed a kiss on his arm which made it heal in an instant. Izuku stood up looking at his arm in amazement. He didn't believe that it healed so fast, but he felt drained. While I expected some drawback, I didn't think it would be to such an extent. You should probably refrain from using 100% of one for all for now, All Might said while looking at the amount of destruction caused by one punch. Midoriya-kun, you should go home and rest for now. Healing that arm used up a lot of your energy, Recovery Girl said, smiling up at him. Yeah, young Midoriya will continue his tomorrow. When Izuku reached home that day, he immediately crashed on his bed due to the exhaustion. How should I regulate the flow of one for all through my body? One punch at 100% broke my arm badly. I can't afford to have my limbs broken every time I use it, Izuku thought, turning to stare at a poster of All Might. All Might wasn't able to give any pointers, so I'll have to figure this myself probably. Heaving a sigh, he went back to staring at the ceiling when his mom called him down for dinner. Because of having a large chunk of his energy depleted, Izuku ate a lot that night. After dinner, he came back to his room and sat down to meditate. He smiled at the feeling of the familiar flames starting to cover his body as he focused them to not burn his room down. This was his mental training to control the destructive powers of his flames. As the flames covered his whole body, a sudden thought struck him that made the flames dissipate. That's it. I was trying to use one for all, thinking of it as something special. I forgot that a quirk is just another bodily function. With that piece of information in mind, if I try to use one for all now, he thought while standing up. With a deep breath, he brought his hands to his sides while starting to channel one for all through his whole body. He smirked at the power flowing through him as it became stable gradually. His body was now glowing green and had small sparks of lightning flowing around it. He pumped a fist in the air at figuring out the proper way of using one for all. This power is amazing. I've never felt anything like this. This feeling is totally different from when I use my flames. With another deep breath, he released the control over one for all and smiled as the glow around him receded. I can't wait to show this to All Might tomorrow, Izuku thought before sitting down and going back to meditating. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Momo was looking out of her window. 5 more months before I can see him. I should have asked for his number, she thought with a sigh which morphed into a smile. You better keep your promise, Izuku, she whispered before switching off the lights and drifting off to sleep. All Might was grinning proudly at the glowing figure of Izuku, who was channeling one for all through his body. Aizawa was smirking at the boy's ability to figure it out so quickly, and Recovery Girl was looking at the kid in awe. You never stop surprising me, kid. Now try to use that power, All Might said, pointing towards another training dummy. Yes, Izuku replied, drawing in a deep breath. He readied himself and threw a punch at the dummy. Needless to say, the dummy was decimated. Not as badly as what a 100% punch did, but decimated nonetheless. Nicely done, young Midoriya. And I see that you didn't suffer any backlash at all. Judging by the power in that punch, I'd say that it was around 10% of the power of one for all. All Might said as the glow around Izuku receded. Seeing as we have plenty of time before the entrance exams, let's train your body to handle more than 10%. And I should also train to use both Dragon Flame and one for all in conjunction, Izuku said, looking up at All Might with a huge grin. Then what are we waiting for, kid? Let's get on to it, All Might said while shifting to his buff form. Try channeling both your quirks together and try to hit me. You got it. Izuku adopted his usual stance with hands clenched to the sides as he channeled both one for all and Dragon Flames through his body. As the familiar flames covered his body along with the green glow and sparks of one for all, they started synchronizing with each other. When both quirks were in complete harmony while being channeled through Izuku's body, he was covered in blue flames as green sparks danced around his body. The hair covering his red eye was now flying up as both his eyes became visible. The joy in them was apparent as a laugh bubbled forth from his chest. This is amazing. I've never felt anything like this before, Izuku said while looking at his hands in amazement. He then turned to All Might with a smirk. You ready, All Might? As ready as I'll ever be, young Midoriya, All Might replied with his signature grin. Izuku leapt towards All Might at an incredible speed that surprised even himself, but he was able to get his bearings back fast enough to throw a punch at the towering figure before him. Here I come, Fist of the Dragon, Izuku shouted as he hit All Might with all the power his dual quirks provided. All Might raised his arms to block the punch. In doing so, he was pushed back as his grin shifted a bit. My word, young Midoriya, that was some amazing power, All Might said, standing up fully and shaking his arms. Izuku grinned at the praise from his role model before he flopped to the ground in exhaustion as the flames around him receded. While that power was amazing, it looks as if it takes a lot from me, Izuku said, panting. Yeah, but it doesn't look like you suffered any other backlash except for getting severely exhausted. Let's try to work on improving that along with trying to increase the output of one for all that your body can safely handle, All Might said, helping Izuku up. Yeah, Izuku replied with a tired smile. For the next 5 months, Izuku tried hard to both control the duality of his quirks better and to increase the output of one for all to go with his flames. Aizawa and Recovery Girl watched over him as well, giving him pointers sometimes, and sometimes Aizawa had to remove Izuku's quirk so that the boy didn't overexert himself. The hard training that Izuku was put through paid off really well. He was now able to channel 25% of one for all along with his flames, while 25% of one for all alone was nothing to laugh at. Its harmony with his dragon flames made it even more devastating when both quirks were used together. He did not get exhausted now after throwing just one punch. He could maintain that form for 7 hours even with constant activity. All Might was proud of Izuku. He gave the boy the day off from training to take proper rest as he needed it for the exam tomorrow. You've come so far in such short a time, young Midoriya. I see that I've made a great choice for my successor. Good luck with your exam tomorrow, were All Might's exact words this morning. With nothing better to do as he was prepared for the written part from days before, he was just lying on his bed while staring up at the ceiling. Like always, his thoughts drifted towards Momo. Just 2 more weeks before I can see her. Let's do my best tomorrow. I have a promise to keep, he thought with a smile before sleep overtook him. The gates of UA weren't really a new sight for Izuku as he stood before them. Just as he was going to enter, a familiar voice from behind him stopped him in his paths. Move out of my way, Deku, or I'll kill you, Katsuki said while moving by Izuku and entering the gates. Hello to you too, Bakugo, Izuku said, stuffing his hands within his pockets. As he took his first step, he tripped on a crack in the ground. Crap, I'm gonna hurt my face before the exam, Izuku thought when suddenly he stopped in mid-fall. A girl then straightened him and turned to him with a smile. Sorry for using my quirk on you, but it'll be bad luck if you fell before the exam, right? She said while still smiling brightly. Yeah, thanks for saving my face from hitting the ground. I think we should go in now. And good luck for your exam as well. After Izuku was done with the written part which he was sure that he aced it, he entered the auditorium where Present Mike was explaining the next part of the exam. To all of you examinees listeners tuning in, welcome to my show today. Everybody say hey. Present Mike shouted. Silence. What a refined response, he replied as his body shook with disappointment. Then I'll quickly present to you the rundown of the practical exam. Are you ready? Yeah. Silence. Tells you how wound up everyone is when even Present Mike can't get a response. Izuku muttered, to which the 2 boys sitting on both his sides snickered. I don't know about the others, but I'm finding it quite funny, the boy with red hair, sitting to Izuku's right said. As am I, the boy with dirty blonde hair, sitting to Izuku's left added. As it says in the application requirements, you listeners will be conducting 10-minute urban mock battles after this. You can bring whatever you want with you. After this presentation, you'll be heading to the specified battle centers. Okay, Present Mike said, hoping for a response. Silence. In other words, they won't let you work with your friends, the red-haired boy stated. You're right. Even though we have consecutive examinee numbers, we're assigned to different battle centers, Izuku replied looking at his card. He was assigned to Battle Center B. The red-haired one had E and the dirty blonde-haired one had C. 3 kinds of foe villains are assigned to each battle center. You gain points for each one based on their difficulty. Your goal, dear listeners, is to use your quirks and immobilize these foe villains. Of course, attacking other examinees and performing any other kind of unheroic act is prohibited, Present Mike explained as the screen behind him had the 3 types of enemies on it. May I ask a question? A boy with glasses suddenly raised his hand. On receiving permission and a spotlight being shone on him, he asked, there are 4 types of foe villains drawn on the printout. If this is a misprint, then UA should be ashamed of such a foolish mistake. We examinees are here because we wish to be melded into exemplary heroes. He then pointed towards Izuku and the 2 others before saying, also, you 3 at the back have been muttering nonstop. It's distracting. If you're here on a pleasure trip, then you should leave immediately. Geez, he's really wound up, isn't he? The dirty blonde-haired whispered to Izuku, to which he just snickered quietly. Okay, examinee number 7111. Good catch. The 4th type of villain is worth 0 points. This guy's an obstacle, so to say. Every battle center has one. An obstacle will go crazy in narrow spaces. It's not impossible to defeat, but you don't have any reason to defeat it either. I recommend that you guys avoid it, Present Mike explained. Thank you very much, the boy who asked, bowed deeply before sitting back down. That's all from me. Finally, I'd like to give you examinees a present, our school motto. The hero Napoleon Bonaparte once said, a true hero is one who overcomes life's misfortunes. Go beyond, plus ultra. Present Mike finished with a cheer. Well, I'll wish you 2 luck for this, Izuku said to the 2 guys, to which he received grins and was wished luck as well. Izuku was standing in front of a huge gate. He had switched to some clothes that were more comfortable for fighting like the other examinees. Looking around, he saw the girl he met in the morning. As he was about to go to her, a hand on his shoulder stopped him. He looked behind to see the boy with the glasses from before. That girl is trying to focus. Are you taking the entrance exam to interfere with everyone else? He asked, to which Izuku just gave him a bored look. Are you done? Izuku said, removing the boy's hand from his shoulder. Okay, start. All the examinees turned to present Mike in shock. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in a real fight. Run, run, the die has been cast. Izuku looked back towards the gate to see everyone rushing in. He just sighed while activating One for All and dashed ahead of everyone. He then leapt on top of a building, removed his headphones and focused on the sounds in the surroundings. When he recognized the sounds of robots coming from a direction away from the other examinees, he put his headphones back on and leapt in that direction. Activating his flames, he jumped upon the robots. With both One for All and Dragon Flames activated, he was going through the robots as if they were nothing. Somewhere in a dark room, many figures were sitting and watching the examinees' performance on the screens. In this examination, the examinees haven't been informed of the number of villains and their locations. They have to draw them out. They're given a limited time in a vast area. The voice, which belonged to Principal Nezu, said, information gathering ability to understand the situation before anyone else. Mobility that can be used in various circumstances. Discernment to be able to stay calm in any situation. And of course, pure combat ability. These basic abilities needed to keep the peace in the streets are being turned to points in this exam. The screen shifted through various examinees displaying the mentioned abilities before settling on Izuku, who was showing all of the abilities that Principal Nezu mentioned. On the screen, Izuku was dashing between robots far away from the other examinees as he took them out easily. That makes it 82 points, Izuku said, standing between pieces of destroyed robots, before turning around and leaping on top of another building while taking off his headphones. Doesn't this year's group look promising? Another voice in the room said. Well, we don't know for sure yet. Their true test is still to come, another voice said before pushing a red button. Izuku turned sharply on hearing a building exploding. The robot that rose through the debris towered over nearly every building in the area. It was the zero-pointer obstacle. Isn't it too big though? Izuku thought as he saw the robot punch the ground, and he could hear the other examinees running away from the location. As he was about to put his headphones back on, he heard a pain groan near the ground where the robot had punched. The voice sounded female and seemed familiar to Izuku. Without wasting a second, he leapt in the direction of the sound. Everyone stopped running to see a green-haired boy jump into the dust cloud created by the robot's punch. Izuku reached the point to see the girl from this morning with her foot trapped beneath some debris. He wasted no second in dashing towards her and lifting the debris from her foot before throwing it away. Can you move? He asked in concern. The girl only shook her head before saying, I used my quirk too much and it makes me nauseous. Okay, hold on, Izuku said before picking her up and dashing back towards the other examinees. The girl just turned to the other direction and threw up as soon as he put her down. The boy with glasses just looked at Izuku with newfound respect. I was rude to him earlier, but he just saved that girl when we all just ran away. I have to apologize to him. Oh well, let's finish this, shall we? Izuku stood up with a smirk as he activated both One for All and Dragon Flames once again. His smirk grew as the familiar flames and sparks surrounded his body, but this time the flames were red. His mismatched eyes shone brightly as he turned towards the zero-pointer. The rest of the examinees were just looking on in awe at the power radiating from the boy. Clenching a fist, Izuku jumped towards the robot, leaving cracks in the ground from where he jumped. Drawing back his fist, he punched the robot right in the face while shouting, Dragon's blazing fist. The robot reeled back as its face caved in. Multiple explosions racked up its body as it fell down. As Izuku landed, which cracked the ground under his feet again, the robot fell down and blew up in a large explosion. Izuku just turned towards the explosion and sucked in all of the flames generated. When he was finished, all that left was the large, smoking body of the robot, as he just casually strolled away from it with his hands stuffed in his pockets and his headphones back on. The rest of the examinees were openly gaping at him now. The boy with the glasses then stepped forward and said, I'm sorry about being rude to you earlier. You were the only one who came to save that girl when we were just running away. I'm Tenya Ida, by the way. Apology accepted. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you. Thanks for saving me. I'm Ochako Uraraka. It's nice to meet you as well, Izuku-kun, the girl who had recovered by now said while bouncing up to Izuku. Just doing what any hero would have done, Izuku said while scratching the back of his head and grinning. That's right. It rises to the surface. The most important qualification of a hero, the spirit of self-sacrifice, All Might said looking at Izuku's grinning face on the screen. Izuku was sitting in his room after dinner, meditating as usual. He wasn't worried about his results at all. By self-scoring, he was confident that he aced the written part, and he got 82 points from killing the robots in the practical part. He got into UA that he was sure of. He was just waiting for the acceptance letter now. Speaking of which, Izuku, it's here. his mom shouted while knocking at his door loudly, which broke his focus. Luckily, he wasn't controlling his flames, otherwise he would have burned down his room. He just heaved a sigh and opened the door to see his mother with a grin and holding his UA acceptance letter. "Thank you, Mom. Now if you don't mind, can I read this in private?" Izuku said, taking the letter from Inko. "Oh sure, Izuku dear. Just let me know the results. Though I have no doubt that you're accepted into UA," Inko said and left with a smile. Izuku closed the door, went to his desk and opened the letter. A small device fell from it and projected a hologram. "I am here as a projection." All Might's grinning face appeared in front of Izuku. All Might. Izuku was surprised to see a projection of his role model in the letter from UA. "Don't be so surprised, young Midoriya. I came to this town to teach at UA High. Speaking of, I'm elated to tell you that not only did you pass your entrance exam, you aced it by a huge margin. You aced the written part of the exam. And while you had the highest villain points of all the examinees, the way you saved that girl and destroyed the zero-pointer earned you hero points," All Might said, showing Izuku a screen. Izuku was surprised to see his name adjacent to the first position with 82 villain points and 60 hero points, making it a total of 142 points. "This is crazy," he thought as a huge grin grew on his face. "Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia." "Yeah," Izuku said as tears of joy came to his eyes. He checked in the envelope to find his ID and a note from All Might to meet him at the seaside park next night. After telling his mom that he aced the entrance exam, to which she hugged him tightly, he went to sleep with a smile on his face. Izuku smiled on seeing the lanky form of his mentor looking towards the sea. He looked around to check if there was anyone else there before tapping All Might on the shoulder. All Might looked back at his successor and smiled. "Congratulations on getting in, young Midoriya," he said while raising a hand. Izuku high-fived him and said, "Yeah, though I didn't expect to finish first. Don't sell yourself short, young Midoriya. You have the capability of becoming a great hero. That's why I chose you as a successor. By the way, I was not among the judges who decided your rescue points. You're the kind of guy who'd see that as cheating, right?" "Thank you, All Might. So, what do you say about some snacks?" "Sure, snacks sound good. Race you to there. Won't have it another way. Let's go." All Might looked at the running figure of Izuku and thought, "The flame I passed on to you will only grow stronger from here. In the meantime, I'll grow weaker and soon it'll be time for me to step down from the pedestal. The world needs a new symbol of peace. I hope that you'll be ready by then." Izuku was putting on his shoes, ready to head out for the first day of his high school. Inko was there to see him off. "Izuku, do you have tissues?" "Yes." "And handkerchief?" "Do you have your handkerchief?" "Yes, Mom. I'm gonna be late, so see you later." "Izuku, you're really cool," Inko said with a smile. "Thanks, Mom. I'll be off now." He was dressed in the UA uniform, which consisted of a white shirt, dark green trousers, and a gray blazer. There was a red tie as well, but he chose to omit that. On his head were his signature headphones, and his red eye was covered with his hair as usual. He dashed through the streets to the train station and quickly boarded his train, arriving before the familiar gates of UA High. He took a deep breath before entering. He was looking around for his class. 1A, 1A. It's gotta be around somewhere. Ah, there it is. The door Izuku now stood before was huge. "It's huge. Is this for accessibility?" was his thought before he opened the door. "Don't put your feet up on the desk. Don't you think it is disrespectful to our upperclassmen and the people who made the desk?" Tenya was reprimanding Katsuki, who was sitting with his feet propped up on the desk. "Nope. What middle school did you go to, you sign character?" Katsuki asked with a sneer. "I attended Sumi Private Academy. My name is Tenya Ida." "Sumi, so you're a damn elite, huh? I'll have fun crushing you." Izuku just deadpanned at the commotion going on inside and opened the door further before stepping in. On hearing the door opening, the whole class's attention shifted to the newcomer. Katsuki just scoffed and looked away after seeing who entered. Izuku swept his eyes over everyone in the class and smiled when his eyes made contact with Momo's, who smiled back at him. "You realize the true nature of the exam, right, Midoriya? As much as I hate to admit it, you're way better than me," Tenya said, standing before Izuku. "Sorry, but I didn't realize anything," Izuku muttered. "Oh, it's Izuku-kun. I have to say, the way you blew up the zero-pointer with one punch was awesome," Ochako said from behind Izuku. On hearing that he blew away the zero-pointer, the whole class was gaping openly at Izuku now. To say that Momo was impressed would be an understatement. She was utterly amazed at the strength of her crush. "You blew away the zero-pointer. That thing was huge, man." The boy with the red hair whom Izuku met during Present Mike's presentation got up and said, "Oh right, I'm Ijiro Kirishima, Izuku Midoriya. And blowing away that thing wasn't really hard. I was just focused on saving Ochako over there," he said while pointing to Ochako. "If you guys are done playing at making friends, then I'd like you to take your seats." A tired voice from behind them made them turn to a caterpillar-like thing. Izuku deadpanned on seeing that it was just Aizawa in a sleeping bag. "It took you all 8 seconds to become quiet. Time is limited. I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher, he said while climbing out of the sleeping bag. Homeroom teacher was the collective thought of everyone in the class. Good. Now put these on and meet me in the field, he said, pulling out a tracksuit from his sleeping bag. Did he just pull it out of his sleeping bag? Izuku thought with a shudder. Everyone was assembled before Aizawa, wearing their tracksuits. Izuku was standing beside Momo after greeting her. I see that you kept your promise, she whispered while smiling at him. Of course, Momo. Wouldn't dream of letting you down, Izuku whispered back and smiled at the blush that grew on her face. Now that everyone is here, we're gonna have some tests. I need a volunteer. Aizawa looked over the gathered children before his eyes landed on Izuku. Let's have an example of the guy who came first in the entrance exam. Midoriya, come here. The class looked as Izuku went to where Aizawa was standing. What was your record for softball throw in middle school? 70 meters. Well then, take this and throw this as hard as you can using your quirk. You can do whatever you want as long as you stay inside that circle, he said while handing Izuku a ball. Izuku moved within the circle drawn on the ground, closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Flames started licking up his body starting from his legs. When he was fully covered in the flames, he opened his eyes and grinned hugely. He drew his arm back and swung it forward with as much strength as he could muster in this form. He didn't want to display too much of his powers, so he refrained from using one for all. The ball shot forward from his hand and disappeared in the distance. A ding from the device Aizawa was holding signified that it had landed. This is the most rational way to form the foundation of a hero, Aizawa said, turning the device towards the class to show them the distance. 810 meters. Holy shit, dude, the boy with dirty blonde hair exclaimed. This looks fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want, a girl with pink skin said excitedly. That's to be expected of the hero course, a boy with tape canisters on his elbows said. This looks fun, right? Tell you what, the student who gets the lowest total score in all of these tests would be deemed to have no potential and will be expelled. The students gasped in shock. You can't do that on our first day, Ochako said. I can. The teachers here at UA have the freedom to choose to teach their students the way they see fit. So without any further delay, start the tests. Before that, Midoriya, a word please. The rest of you gather near the tracks. When Izuku walked up to Aizawa, he had a really displeased look on his face. Midoriya, care to explain why you held back? I know what you're capable of. I didn't want to display too much of my power. This test is being performed to let the students know of the limits of their quirks. You know our motto, go beyond, plus ultra. How are you going to know your limit if you hold back? If I see you holding back again, I'll put you in last position and you'll be expelled. Understood. I understand, sensei, Izuku said, looking down at his shoes. You're doing the softball throw again. Now join the others on the tracks. The first test was 50-meter dash. Tenya was put with the girl whose features resembled a frog's. As soon as Aizawa yelled start, Tenya rushed towards the finish, his quirk greatly enhancing his speed. 3.04 seconds, the device said as Tenya crossed the line. 50 meters is too short for anything above third gear, Tenya said after coming to a stop. 5.58 seconds was the frog girl's record. Next, Ochako was put with a guy with a tail. She touched her clothes and shoes to lighten them up before getting ready at the start line. When Aizawa yelled start, the boy leapt forward using his tail while Ochako ran normally. 5.49 seconds, 7.15 seconds were the times as both crossed the finish line. Next, it was the pink-skinned girls and some guy with a belt who seemed to be always smiling. You people are not being stylish enough for this. Let me show you how it's done. Saying that, he faced the opposite direction. As Aizawa yelled start, he jumped and shot a laser from his stomach. Midway through, the laser beam faded and he fell down as the pink-skinned girl overtook him. He got up and performed the same stunt again to cross the finish line. If I use the laser for more than a second, I get a stomachache, he said while still smiling. What the heck, was the collective thought of Izuku and the others watching. For the next turn, Izuku was put with Katsuki. Katsuki just sneered at Izuku before getting ready. Izuku paid no mind to Katsuki and was grinning at the prospect of going all out. As soon as Aizawa yelled start, flames and sparks covered Izuku as he shot forward. Katsuki just shot explosions from both his palms to increase his speed, but it wasn't enough to catch up with Izuku. 2.39 seconds was the chime from the device as Izuku crossed the finish line. The whole class's jaw dropped and even Aizawa dropped the device in awe. The flames around Izuku dispersed as he came to a stop and laughed a bit. Katsuki, who crossed at 4.13 seconds, was now glaring hotly at Izuku. 2.39 seconds. Holy shit, dude. That was faster than Ida, the boy with dirty blonde hair said. The second test was the grip strength test. Izuku was just looking at the device boredly. The guy with tape canisters on his elbows and the short guy with purple balls for hair were around the guy who had multiple arms. He was using all the arms of his left side and the device read 540 kilograms. 540 kilograms. Dude, are you a gorilla? or an octopus? The guy with the tape canisters asked. Octopuses are SXY, the purple-haired guy said. Izuku just looked at him weirdly, deciding that it was time to get serious. He activated both his quirks and crushed the device in his hand. The whole class went silent. He looked over to see that Momo was looking back at him with wide eyes while clutching the device with some sort of mechanical clamp. He then realized that he knew nothing about his crush's quirk and she knew little about his quirk as well. Aizawa just sighed and regretted telling Izuku to stop holding back. The next test was standing long jump. The blonde with the laser just crossed the sand using his laser while jumping. Katsuki used his palms to create explosions to get across. Izuku just activated his quirks and broke both their records by jumping further ahead. In repeated side steps, the purple-haired guy was doing great. His hair could be taken off and stuck to surfaces while he just bounced off them. Izuku yawned before activating both his quirks again. He was a blur to the rest of the class, and when he stopped, there was a half-feet trench where he did his side steps. Aizawa just face-palmed hard. The next test was the softball throw. Katsuki came up to throw the ball. He drew his arm back and pitched it forward while adding an explosion to the pitch and screaming, "Die! Die!" was Izuku's confused mutter. The device dinged and Aizawa showed that Katsuki had gotten 705.2 meters. Katsuki gritted his teeth at getting less than Izuku. Achako just nullified the gravity on the ball and threw it where it kept going up before disappearing. The device dinged and Aizawa showed that she had gotten an infinity. Infinity? That's crazy, the dirty blonde-haired guy said. Now, since Midoriya was holding back in his last throw, he'll be doing this again, Aizawa said, smirking in Izuku's direction. Katsuki was now furious after hearing that he got lesser than Izuku even when the guy was holding back. Izuku just sighed and moved to the circle again. He could just use both his quirks and throw the ball to a further distance, but he decided to be a bit more creative. Activating both his quirks, he grinned when he saw that his flames were red again. He conjured a fireball of roughly basketball size around the softball and compressed it to a film of flames around it. Even Aizawa was interested at what Izuku was doing now. When he deemed that it was stable enough to be thrown, he drew his arm back and threw it with all his strength. The ball shot forward, and on reaching the highest point, an explosion occurred that further propelled the ball till it vanished from sight. The ding on the device signified its landing as Aizawa's eyes widened a bit. He turned the device towards the class, which read 10.24 kilometers. Everyone in the class's jaws dropped as Izuku laughed, the flames around him dispersing. His visible eye crinkled as he gave a huge grin in Momo's direction, who was still gaping at him. The rest of the tests ended with Izuku acing each one. His immense stamina and flexibility made it easy for him to get through the seated toe touch, sit-ups, and long-distance run. After the tests ended, the class was gathered once again before Aizawa, excited for their results. Aizawa just sighed and set his device to project the results. Izuku grinned when he saw that he came first, with Momo in the second position. They both exchanged glances and snickered quietly. Katsuki was fuming at the fact that he came fifth. The grape-haired guy, whose name was Minoru Mainta, came last. He dropped to his knees in despair. By the way, about the expulsion, everyone looked to see Aizawa having the greatest shit-eating grin on his face. That was a lie. It was a rational deception to bring out the upper limits of your quirks. The whole class went stone-faced and Izuku dropped to the floor laughing while holding his guts. Oh my god, your faces. Ha ha, Izuku managed to wheeze out while rolling around. Of course it was a deception. You guys thought he was being serious about it? Momo asked the rest of the class. We thought exactly that, was the rest of the class's combined thought. Change back into your uniforms and return to your class. There are handouts with the curriculum and such there. Take a look over them. And for God's sake, someone shut Midoriya up, Aizawa said, pointing towards the boy who was still rolling on the floor, laughing. Oh, I'll be more than happy to do that, Katsuki said, smirking while cracking his knuckles. Non-violently, please, Aizawa reprimanded, which brought forth more peals of laughter from the green-haired boy. Sighing softly, Momo went over to Izuku and offered him a hand. He grabbed it and got up, taking deep breaths to calm himself. He then gave her a grin, to which she responded with a shake of her head and an exasperated sigh. This interaction didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the class. While moving back to the changing rooms, the dirty blonde-haired guy nudged Izuku. So, you and the hottest chick in the class, huh? He said, smirking a bit. Oh right, where are my manners? I'm Denki Kaminari. Izuku Midoriya. Anyway, she's a friend. We met each other before coming to UA, Izuku said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. Whatever you say, bud. Saying that, Denki moved over to his locker. Izuku heaved a sigh of relief before beginning to change back into his uniform. He did have a crush on Momo, but like hell he was going to admit it to anyone. After getting back to class and going through their curriculum, they were dismissed. Izuku preferred to leave the class after everyone else left, so he was just browsing through his phone when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Looking up, he found Momo ready to leave and the classroom empty. Ready to go, Izuku? She asked, smiling down at him. He pocketed his phone, slung his backpack over his shoulder and got up from his seat, turning towards her. Let's go, he responded, responding to her smile with a soft smile of his own. While walking out of the school gates, he decided to ask the question that had been on his mind for a while. So Momo, what exactly is your quirk, if you don't mind me asking? Izuku said, turning to look at her. I don't mind, Izuku, she responded, smiling. My quirk is called creation. It lets me create any inorganic thing from my body as long as I know the exact molecular structure of the thing. If I create anything big, my energy is largely depleted and I have to eat a lot to regain it. That's why I've been studying molecular structures since my childhood. Now that I've told you about my quirk, I want to know about yours, she said, turning to him excitedly. Fair enough. My quirk is called Dragon Flames. It allows me to manipulate any flames around me as well as produce flames of my own. He lighted his hand on fire while Momo looked at the dancing flames in awe. I can also breathe fire, and using these flames further augments my body's strength and speed. Along with that, I can eat any flames around to recharge my energy reserves. Since my quirk manifested, my senses have been heightened as well. That's why I wear these headphones all the time. They made further small talk on the way to the train station about today's tests and Aizawa-sensei's teaching methods. Izuku and Momo both laughed on recalling the face of the rest of the class at the end of the test. Arriving at the train station, Momo had to split ways with Izuku. This is it then, Izuku. I'll see you tomorrow, she said, turning towards him. I'll see you tomorrow as well, Momo. Seeing Momo disappear among the crowd, Izuku turned and walked in the other way. I hope someday I do get the courage to tell her, was his only thought as he boarded his train. The curriculum of UA High's Hero Course, regular required classes, like English, in the morning. Which of these English sentences is wrong? President Mike turned to the class after writing down 4 sentences on the board. So normal were the thoughts of the front row. So damn boring, Katsuki thought, closing his eyes. Everybody heads up. Let's get this party started. President Mike shouted to motivate the class. The relative pronoun is in the wrong position in number 4, Izuku thought but didn't bother raising his hand. Momo, who was sitting behind him, raised her hand to give the answer. Okay, Yaoyorozu, come on. Izuku just sighed. Lunch is at the main cafeteria, where students can buy gourmet food at reasonable prices. White rice is great comfort food, isn't it? The cook hero, Lunch Rush said while giving a thumbs up. Izuku and Momo both smiled up at him while eating their foods. And then in the afternoon, the students finally had Hero Basic Training. I am, All Might said before throwing open the door, coming through the door like a normal person. Izuku just shook his head at his mentor's dramatic entry. It's All Might. Wow, he really is a teacher here. That's a costume from the Silver Age, isn't it? Or the excited mutters coming from the students. I teach Hero Basic Training. It is a subject where you train in different ways to learn the basics of being a hero. You'll take most units of this subject. Let's get right to it. All Might struck a pose before continuing. This is what we'll be doing today, combat training. Combat, Katsuki shouted excitedly. Training, Izuku finished exasperatedly. And to go with that are these. All Might pointed towards the wall where 4 panels slid outwards, having compartments numbered from 1 to 20 on them. Costumes made, based on your quirk registration and requests you sent in before school started. After you change, gather in ground beta. Yes, sir. All Might was looking towards the entrance from where the students started entering. They say that the clothes make the man, young men and ladies. Be fully aware that from now on, you are heroes. All Might said as his grin grew. That's great, everyone. You all look cool. Sweeping his eyes over the gathered students, he continued. Now, shall we begin, you zygotes? Izuku entered after everyone, hands coming up to fix his headphones in place. As he came into view, everyone's eyes widened. His costume consisted of black pants, a red undershirt and a black jacket. The jacket had golden lines along the shoulder and upper arms which ended in a dragon's face at his elbows. His pants had similar golden lines ending in a dragon's face along his legs. The most noticeable thing, however, was the white scarf that seemed to be made of scales around his neck. All of this was made of fire-resistant fibers, so that Izuku can go all out without having to worry about burning his clothes. On seeing him enter and admiring his costume, Momo went over to him and tapped him on the shoulder. As Izuku turned towards her, his eyes widened at her skimpy costume. He had to hold down a blush while trying not to look below her face. She just smiled sweetly at him. Your costume is really cool, Izuku. Gee, thanks. You look good in your costume as well. Now, let's begin the combat training. All Might's declaration saved him from further embarrassment. Sensei, Tenure raised his hand and asked, This is a battle center from the entrance exam. Will we be conducting urban mock battles again? No, we'll be moving 2 steps ahead. Most of the time, fighting villains takes place outside. But if you look at the total numbers, atrocious villains appear indoors at a higher rate. Imprisonment, house arrest, backroom deals. In this society filled with heroes, truly intelligent villains hide in the shadows, All Might said, his grin faltering a bit. For this class, you'll be split into villain and heroes and will fight 2-on-2 indoor battles. Without basic training. The frog girl, whose name is Isuitsuyu, asked with a tilt of her head. This is a real battle to understand those basics. However, the key this time is that there is no robot that you can just beat up. How will wins and losses be determined? Can we beat them up anyway? Will the punishment be expulsion like in Aizawa-sensei's test? How will we be split up? Isn't this cape crazy? The questions were fired at All Might consecutively. I'll answer all your questions, All Might yelled before opening a small booklet. A script. Izuku deadpanned again at his mentor. The situation is that the villains have hidden a nuclear device somewhere in their hideout. The heroes are trying to dispose of that. The heroes need to catch the villains or get the nuclear weapon back in the allotted time. The villains need to protect the nuclear weapon for the whole time or catch the heroes, he explained before taking out a box and continued. Teams and opponents would be decided by drawing lots. They're being decided so haphazardly, Tenya interjected. Pros often have to form makeshift teams with heroes from other agencies. So that's why, Izuku explained. I see. The discernment to look ahead. Please forgive my rudeness. Tenya bowed deeply. It's fine. Let's do this quickly. The teams were decided. Izuku smiled when he saw that he was teamed with Momo. Katsuki and Tenya were put in one team. Uraraka was teamed with Minoru. As the rest of the students teamed up, Momo turned to Izuku and smiled. Let's do our best. Izuku. Yeah. The first teams to fight will be. All Might announced as he picked 2 balls from the heroes and villains boxes respectively. These guys. The balls Rita and D. Team A was Izuku and Momo. Team D was Tenya and Katsuki. Team A will be the heroes and Team D will be the villains. Everyone else, head towards the monitor room. Yes, sir. Katsuki turned to glare at Izuku, to which Izuku paid no mind. This made Katsuki grit his teeth. Villain team, go in first and set up. In 5 minutes, the hero team will break in and the battle will start. Yes, sir. Young Ida, young Bakugo, learn to think from the perspective of a villain. This is pretty close to a real battle. Go all out and don't be afraid to get hurt. If things go too far, I'll stop it. All Might advised the 2 of them. Katsuki just glared towards Izuku, who was discussing something with Momo, and grit his teeth again. Even if this is training, it pains me to become a villain, Tenya said as he moved closer to the nuclear device and tapped it. It's papier mâche. Just stay here and guard the device. 4 eyes. I'll go look for Deku. You do seem to be especially angry when it comes to Midoriya. Meanwhile, outside, Izuku and Momo were going over the building floor plan. The building had 7 floors and both had a hunch that the nuclear device would be at the upper floors. Now, let's start the indoor person-to-person combat training with Team A and Team D. All Might announced from the monitor room. Okay everyone, you all should think as well, he said to the rest of the students. Young Midoriya, here you're no more than a single student. I'll grade you strictly without playing favorites. All Might thought while putting in an earpiece and taking up a notepad. As soon as they heard the announcement, Izuku motioned for Momo to keep quiet as he took off his headphones and focused on the building in front of him. Judging from the sounds of their footsteps, heartbeats and breathing, he concluded that Tenya was guarding the weapon which was on the 6th floor while Katsuki was patrolling on the 4th floor. He relayed the situation to Momo after putting his headphones back on. While I think that we should take out Bakugo first, let's hear your plan too, Momo said, turning towards him. I think we should enter through the roof, go to the device and retrieve it, avoiding any confrontation with Bakugo, Izuku suggested. That is a nice plan, Momo blinked before continuing. But do tell how will we reach the roof? In response, Izuku just grinned mischievously, picked her up bridal style, to which she released a small squeal and activated one for all. He then proceeded to jump on the roof with Momo holding onto his neck tightly. When he landed and put her down, she smacked him upside the head while taking deep breaths to calm herself. Warn me before pulling such a stunt again. She tried to glare at him but failed as a blush grew on her face, remembering how Izuku had held her. Now that we're here, we should start on that retrieval, Izuku said, rubbing where Momo had smacked him. Entering through the rooftop door, Izuku and Momo started making their way to the 6th floor. Momo was creating several small dolls that looked like her. What are those? Izuku asked, looking at her weirdly as she stored the dolls in her belt. Oh, these are Russian matryoshka dolls. That's nice. Why are you creating them though? You'll see, was her only reply as she smirked at him. When they reached the staircase that led to the 6th floor, Izuku motioned for Momo to stop. He took off his headphones again to ensure Tenya and Katsuki's locations. Katsuki was on the 3rd floor now while Tenya was still guarding the bomb. He put his headphones back on and motioned for her to move. This is the room, he whispered to her after reaching the door of the room where the bomb was kept. Inside, Tenya was talking to himself. Bakugo is a natural at being bad, but that fits this training perfectly. Then I must also devote myself to being a villain. That's right. This is another trial to turn me into a man who will not bring shame to the Ida family. Become a villain. Be dyed with evil to become a hero. He did a poor imitation of an evil laugh before continuing, I am extremely evil. Outside the room, Momo was trying hard to hold in her laughter. Well, he's into it, Izuku murmured, shaking his head. Meanwhile, Katsuki was on the second floor looking out for Izuku and Momo. He went over to each window and saw that there was no sign of entry. He had assumed that if they entered, it would be through the second floor. He was about to go down to the first floor when a thought struck him. Did the nerd enter through the roof? As soon as the thought entered his mind, he turned and started running up the stairs. He tried calling Tenya through his earpiece but received no answer. Got him it. How could I have been so careless? That nerd would totally plan to enter through the roof. After regaining her composure, Momo whispered to Izuku, shut your eyes. Now, as soon as Izuku shut his eyes close, Momo threw the matryoshka dolls she created inside the room. Tenya was alerted by the rolling dolls towards him, which opened up to reveal flash grenades that exploded, blinding him. Let's go, Izuku said while rushing in. He tackled the blinded Tenya to the ground, tying his wrists behind the back with the capture tape provided. Momo quickly retrieved his earpiece. After restraining Tenya, they could hear footsteps rushing up the stairs. Izuku nodded to Momo and she nodded back, creating a stun gun as fast as she could. Izuku just walked up to the weapon and touched it. Retrieved, he said as soon as Katsuki entered through the door and was shot by the stun gun. He fell down to floor paralyzed, glaring hotly at Izuku. Good job, Izuku said, going over to Momo and raising his hand. Yeah, she said as she high-fived him. The rest of the class was gaping at the screen in the monitor room. The hero team, All Might said as his smile grew even bigger, wins. That was a sick plan, Denki said. Did you see how he took Ida down so easily? Mina said, bouncing on her feet. And they restrained the villains without even needing to fight them, Ijiro said, grinning widely. When both the hero team and the villain team were present in front of All Might and the rest of the class, All Might said, the MVP for the match is young Midoriya. Anyone want to tell why? Shoto raised his hand and said, yes, All Might, sir. Midoriya was the one to come up with the plan and he provided the mobility required for them to enter through the roof. He also cooperated splendidly with Yaoyorozu, having her play a part in the capture and retrieval. It was obvious that Bakugo decided to go by himself due to some personal grudge and Ida wasn't paying much attention to his surroundings. He said more than I expected, All Might thought, trembling slightly. Well, young Midoriya was splendid out there. He showed that he had both fighting skills as well as good cooperation and is able to come up with plans on the spot. But that was correct, All Might said, giving Shoto a thumbs up. Izuku was rubbing the back of his head bashfully and Katsuki was trembling with rage. Am I not even worth fighting with the nerd? Is that what he thinks? He thought, snapping out of it as All Might placed a hand on his shoulder. Whether you win or lose, looking back and learning from your experiences is a part of life. Katsuki took a deep breath on hearing that as his rage cooled down a bit. Maybe All Might was right. Maybe he needs to reflect back on his actions. All right everyone, let's change locations and start the second match. Tackle this training after thinking on what we just talked about. Yes, sir. Everyone responded with renewed enthusiasm. The second match was between Shoto and Mizo as the hero team and Mashirao and Toru as the villain team. Needless to say, Shoto froze the whole building, making the villains unable to move and gaining an easy victory over them. The rest of the class was shivering while looking at the screen. Izuku and Momo marveled at Shoto's strength and Katsuki was actually afraid at seeing more people that were stronger than him. One by one each team finished their matches. At the end, everyone was gathered before All Might at the place where they had gathered at the start of the class. Good work everyone, All Might said to the gathered students before him. We didn't have any injuries during the matches either. You guys took this on seriously. You all did a great job for your first training. To have such a proper class after Aizawa-sensei's class, Asui started to say, it's kind of anticlimactic. She finished as some students around her nodded. We're free to have proper classes as well. Well then, I have to dismiss the class now. Change and return to your classroom, All Might said before vanishing in a cloud of dust. When they all were changed and back in the classroom, everyone surrounded Izuku. Man, you were so cool out there, Denki said. Yeah, no one else's match went as fast as yours, Mina said, bouncing on her feet. After seeing you guys' performance, how could we let down on ours? So, we did our best as well, Sato said. Izuku was just scratching his cheek bashfully. You guys are giving me too much credit. Without Momo, we couldn't have pulled off that plan. So, she did her best as well, Izuku said, nodding towards Momo, who blushed as the group's attention shifted to her. You were really good out there. Yeah, Momo, Juru said. Izuku smiled on seeing Momo getting the praise she deserved. His attention shifted towards the door as he saw Katsuki leaving. He excused himself from the conversation and went after Katsuki. Bakugo, Izuku called out when they both reached the gates. A moment please, if you don't mind. Deku, Katsuki said with a sneer. Did you come here to gloat about how you beat me without even using your quirk? Is that it? That's not it, damn it. This is why we can never have a proper talk, Izuku said while rubbing his temples. Then what did you want to talk about, nerd? Katsuki asked, turning towards Izuku fully. Pride is a good thing to have, Bakugo. You have all the abilities needed to become a pro, but you can't let that pride get to your head. Katsuki grit his teeth and yelled, shut up. You think I don't know that? After seeing that ponytail girl defeating me so easily, after seeing that ice guy, I thought that they're too strong for me. He wiped the tears of frustration that sprang to his eyes before continuing. I'm just starting out, damn it. This is the place where I'll take the top spot. And not even you, ponytail girl or ice guy, can stop me from becoming number one. Ha, Izuku said with a smirk, just what I expected of you. Don't go back on your words, Katsuki. After all, we're rivals. Katsuki allowed a small smirk to adorn his face before saying, just you wait till I crush you, nerd. Meanwhile, All Might was looking at them from behind one of the columns. I came to counsel young Bakugo, but what the hell, kid? You just gave him a hell of a pep talk yourself. Looks like I made the perfect choice when I chose you as my successor, he thought as a grin came to his thin face. A reporter raised a mic to aboard Izuku's face while asking, hey, you. How are All Might's classes? I think I have to go to the nurse's office. Please excuse me, he replied before pushing through them and entering the school. Ochako, Tenya and Katsuki were interviewed by the reporters as well. Ochako didn't say anything meaningful. Tenya bored them with his explanation and Katsuki nearly exploded when one of the reporters mentioned the sludge incident. The reporters were shut outside when UAS security kicked in after one of them tried to enter the gates. Aizawa was addressing Class 1 about the training they underwent the day before. Good work on yesterday's combat training. I saw the videos and results, he sighed before looking towards Katsuki. Bakugo, you're talented, so don't go acting like a kid. I know, Katsuki muttered, averting his eyes. And Midoriya, you settled it without using your quirk. That was impressive. Your plan and cooperation with Yaoyorozu were flawless as well. I expect you to keep this up. Yes, sensei. Now let's get down to homeroom business. Sorry about the late notice, but today, I'll have you take another special test. The class thought with dread. Decide on a class representative. Oh, it's actually a normal school activity, everyone thought with a sigh of relief. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.